So let's start with the session. So I'd like to quickly tell you about what actually machine learning is, and you might be aware of machine learning and data science. It's a very hot topic, and since last 2-3 years, it has it's on an exponential growth right now, and everybody's talking about it. You can hear it everywhere. Machine learning, data science, AI. So what exactly is AI? What exactly is machine learning? And what is data science? How do all these fields differ from each other? So what artificial intelligence is, that AI is a very generic field. It started some 30-40 years ago with the aim of introducing human level intelligence in machines and robots. And since last 10 or 15 years or so, uh, we have seen rise in machine learning. Uh, that happened because there was a sudden surge of huge amount of data, with people writing lots of comments on Facebook and sharing their photos on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, and YouTube. People are writing comments, and Amazon, with the rise of e-commerce, we have people buying lots of stuff, billions of transactions happening every day, right? So with the rise of data, there was a challenge which came to how to organize this data. So data organization was easier. You can just store the data, you can manage the data with database, DBMS and MySQL. But how to make sense of this data, how to make some intelligent conclusion from this data. This is a gold mine sitting right there in front of you. Billions of transactions, billion of people talking to each other, billions of people, billions of health records. But we haven't been doing anything since last 15 years or so, right? So with the advent of machine learning, and with the advent of data, and with the advent of cheaper systems or graphics cards or computational power, RAM, CPU, right? So it was easier to do these calculations, these heavy calculations. So machine learning, AI, and data science relies heavily on mathematical calculations. So on the benefit of the GPU or the graphics card was that you could perform lots of mathematical computations and vector calculations, matrix algebra very easily on the graphics card. So this was about machine learning, AI, and data science. So machine learning is basically application based AI. It is more of how to apply the knowledge from AI to day-to-day field, right? And data science is more of combining all these knowledge from AI and machine learning to solve problems specific to a particular domain. With the domain knowledge, if you combine the domain knowledge of healthcare to machine learning and AI, you come up with a certain solution. If you combine the knowledge of domain knowledge of insurance or banking with machine learning and AI, you come with certain products, right? So AI, you can see, is a superset, and machine learning and data science are the smaller subsets of the AI field. So AI is a superset. The aim of AI is to develop machines which are on par with human level intelligence. That is the main aim of it. But uh, machine learning and data science are solving the smaller problems in subsets, like if somebody is buying certain books, or recommending him some certain other book, or some recommending somebody some movies, right? If you watch certain type of movies, if you go on Amazon, you buy certain products, then what other products you might like. So this is a very small problem, right? But the larger problem is, the larger challenge is AI. So AI is a very huge problem. We are building we are solving small problems with the help of machine learning and data science. And we aim to arrive to a level of human level intelligence for the robots someday. This might happen in the future, but not right now. So I'll quickly also tell you about industry applications. So I've worked in lots of industries, various industries. Like I've worked in travel, hospitality, pharmaceutical, insurance, and biotechnology sector also. And all these fields right now need data scientists heavily, because these people have huge amount of data lying with them, and nobody is making any conclusion, or nobody is making any anything, any sort of prediction out of it. Like, if we have billions of healthcare records, then how do I use it to, predict a certain disease, predict cancer, predict diabetes, right? So I would say that, data science and machine learning will be the new programming of in the coming years. So we had, Java, the age of Java, we had the age of C, C++ prior to that, right? And HTML and all that stuff. But now, because there is a huge amount of data, and there is a dearth of good data scientists. There's, it's really difficult to find a good data scientist in the market right now, because you have to combine your knowledge from programming, mathematics, statistics, and you have to be a domain expert also. You have to talk to everyone, so you have to gather the information, make sense out of it, and slice and dice the data, right? So with that, I would like to say that there is a huge dearth of data scientists right now in the market. We really need some good data scientists, lot of them, thousands of them, lakhs of them even. So let's start with the presentation today, and I'll quickly give you a sense of, lots of people I've heard, lots of students I've heard saying that, machine learning is difficult because it involves mathematics, lots of mathematics. How will we be able to understand these maths? We don't have prior knowledge of mathematics, statistics. We are from biology background, we are from pharma background, or we never took seriously our mathematics class. So it's all right. It doesn't matter, in this course, we'll be taking examples from day-to-day life, very generic examples, and try to correlate them with the mathematical equations and the understanding. We'll start with very generic stuff and then build up upon them the mathematical foundation and the probabilistic and statistical foundation. So it will be really very easy. You have to just hold it. Hello. So yeah, what is machine learning? This is Dilbert. Few of you, might be aware of this guy. So he's saying that based on your internet history, you might be dumb enough to enjoy extreme sports. So the computer is talking to him, talking to Dilbert. Click here to buy a ticket to base jump from International Space Station. So this guy says, I think the internet is trying to kill me. We call it machine learning. So, machine learning sometimes becomes really funny. You have to really be cautious what you are trying to do and what you are trying to suggest. So again, the expectation with data scientists is really, awkward in the market. So if you go hunting for job or for interview, there are a lot of people who still don't understand machine learning and mix machine learning or data science with, normal MySQL or database DBMS. So as you can see in this cartoon, what this guy comes over to this data scientist and says that when a user takes a photo, the app should check whether they are in national park or not. Then this girl or the data scientist says, yeah, it's easy, give me a few hours. And then he requests again and check whether the photo is of a bird. Then the question is, then she answers that I'll need a research team and 5 years. So you can see it's really difficult even to explain people from CS background that how difficult machine learning or data science is, because when you ask an additional question, so the amount of data which is required to answer that question rises exponentially. So that is when machine learning becomes very difficult. So there are two major parts of machine learning that I'll quickly skim over. These are supervised and unsupervised machine learning. So supervised machine learning is, as the name says, that defines that it's like, machine learning under my supervision or under your supervision or under the supervision of the data scientist who is building it. So it's like, when a kid makes a mistake and he learns from the mistake, like, I'll just explain it better with this example. It will be better to explain with this example. So you learn from your experiences. I give the machine some training data. So the training data is, let's say, if the machine has to differentiate between photographs of apples and oranges. So I tell the machine that these 100 photographs are of apple I put them in a folder and label these as Apple, Apple.jpg1, Apple2.jpg, right? And in another separate folder, which I name as oranges, I put 100 images of oranges. Then I train the machine. Then I train the machine on these images, these two images, and I keep 20% of the data hidden from the machine. And on these 20% of the data, I will be testing the machine's accuracy. So let's say if the machine builds up some model of apples and oranges, the machine thinks that apples are reddish in color and orangish in color and more circular than apple. So this is a mathematical formula for apple or oranges. So let's say if a new data or new picture comes in and machine has to predict whether it's an apple or orange. So machine gives me a prediction. So let's say I share the picture which is of orange, but machine fails and it says that the picture is of an apple. So the machine has failed here. So what I'll do is that I will be deducting certain marks or reducing certain marks from this algorithm. So the machine will know that it failed on this particular image. It will go back. I'll retrain the algorithm. I'll tell the machine or the algorithm that you failed on this particular image. Go back and retrain yourself. So I'll be retraining the algorithm. So I'll be checking again with the same picture and I'll check whether the machine has now learned anything or not. So this is how we do with supervised machine learning problems. So there is a supervision. Under the guidance of the human, the machine tries to learn. And then there is the unsupervised learning case. So what happens is that this is a really good problem from biology and pharma background. So you can see we have tumor size and age. So on y-axis we have age, x-axis we have tumors. So you can see the red dots. These are these clearly signify that this data is from elder people and who have a larger size of tumor. But the blue circles are from the younger people and smaller size of the tumor. So if I ask you to differentiate between the cancerous and non-cancerous people, so the problem is the solution is very simple here. We'll be simply drawing a straight line between these two data, and whichever data falls on the upper side of it is cancerous, and if it falls on the lower side of it, it's non-cancerous. So let's see some generic example, some example from day-to-day life. Suppose you are searching for wired on Google, but accidentally you typed word or WIRED or you hit some random key. So if you can see your keyboard right now, you can see that nearby W we have keys Q, A, S, D, and E. So what happens is that we accidentally hit Q, A, S, and E, S, D, and E instead of W. So this is a probabilistic score, that what is the probability of somebody hitting an E rather than W when he wanted to hit rather than Y when he wanted to hit W. So there is a high possibility that you will be hitting E instead of W rather than Y or P instead of W, because these are far off on the keyboard. You got the idea, right? So after the search, so what happens after the search is that you probably realize that you typed it wrong and you go back and search for wired a couple of seconds later. So you go back and edit the search and you type wired correctly. Now what happens is that the Google algorithm recognizes that you search for something a couple of seconds after searching something else, and it keeps this in mind for future users who make a similar typing mistake. So the Google algorithm, it will store such search data. So you typed word, but you wanted to type wired, right? So it will, but you quickly went back and you edited your search, you typed wired again, and then you went on with your browsing. So Google will know that you typed something and quickly you edited it. Means you typed something wrong. There's a possibility, right? So this is machine learning in action. As a result, Google learns to correct it for you. So now this is another problem from day-to-day life, how we make decisions, right? So there is an algorithm called decision tree in machine learning. It's a very basic algorithm. It's from day-to-day life, the challenges we face in day-to-day life, the decisions that we have to make in day-to-day life under a certain constraint. So what is that constraint and what decisions do we make? So let's see this problem. So the constraint here is that I have only 100 rupees in my pocket and I have to arrive my home. And what all I have to do with that? You have got only 100 rupees in your pocket. You have to eat your lunch. You have to buy a chocolate for your younger brother. You have to buy some vegetables. You have to then catch a metro, then finally catch a bus to back to home. What decision will you take? What is the what is more important in all these things? You have to reach your home, and which all things are more on your high priority list? Buying a chocolate, having your lunch, you are very hungry, or buying some vegetables. If you don't buy vegetables, there won't be any dinner, right? But you have to catch the metro also. But then again, after the metro, you have to save some money for a bus also for back home. So you see, there are lots of decision. It's a very simple problem. 100 bucks in my pocket and I have to go back to home. But if you generate the graph for this simple problem, it will be, a very complex graph. If you write down all the decisions. But writing down, we see that, oh my God, it's so much mathematics. Oh my God, I'm feeling scared. This is mathematics and all. But in our mind, we are doing this every day, every second, every moment. Whatever calculations we do, whatever, uh, whenever you are talking to someone, whenever you are making tea, whenever you are going outside, you are making your decisions based on certain probabilities, certain assumptions, and and after those assumptions and your probabilities and what you believe, you arrive at certain conclusion, right? So this is how a decision tree works. So I'm not explaining the decision tree here. I'm just explaining you how you use mathematics in day-to-day life, and it's really very easy. And this is how we'll be understanding mathematics in this course also. We'll be using some very day-to-day generic examples, and we'll be building our complex foundations of machine learning based on those very generic examples. So let's see this very interesting case, numbers. So you see, 9 raised to power 2 or 9 square is 81. All right, everybody knows it. 9 into 5 is 45. No issues. The result, now let's observe this closely. The result is greater than any of the numbers we multiplied. 81 is greater than any of these numbers. 45 is greater than 5 and 9. Right? Agreed? Let's move on to this second example. Now we have decimals in place, right? So 0.9 into 0.9. What happens here? It's 0.81. 0.9 into 0.5. What happens is here? Here is that it's 0.5. The result is, it's smaller than any of the numbers we multiplied. So you see, putting up a decimal, it does something to the numbers, does something to the result. It makes them smaller with respect to the numbers we multiplied. But what is the use of this? Why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this. The reason behind this is because of the probability. Probability, the score of probability comes between 0 to 1, right? In between lies decimal numbers. And when you multiply them, it reduces, as we can see over here. That is why probability is expressed between 0 and 1, right? And why we want to reduce two multiples of probabilities? Why we want to have a smaller number when we multiply two probabilities? Let's see that also. No issues. So a very basic probability question, right? Given the rain data for the month of July from 2019, right? This is the data. Let's suppose that this is a monthly data. There are 31 days of this data. The first day of July month is Tuesday. It rained. Wednesday, it rained. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, it didn't rain. What is the probability it will rain on Sunday? How many Sundays in July? So this is a very simple problem. So we have 31 days data. How many Sundays are there in July? Let's represent it with NS. So let's suppose that there are 4 Sundays in July. How many Sundays did it rain in July? Let's represent with this with RS. So let's suppose that on 2 Sundays it rained out of the 4 Sundays. So 2 out of 4, which is 50%. So there is a 50% probability that it will rain on Sunday. But we can do better. You might agree with me on that, right? Because we have used very simple, basic, assumptions on this. We can also use whether it rained on Saturday, Did it rain on Saturday prior to the Sunday? What was the weather on Saturday? What did it rain on Friday also? So with these additional information, I can give you a better accuracy or better probability that whether or not it will rain on a given Sunday or not. Conditions. It rained today. Okay, fine. So let's understand condition probability. So I don't want to use the terms condition probability right now, but I'm trying to explain you that what are conditions, how we think in our mind about conditional probability. But we just said we have given it a name conditional probability and people get scared. Oh my god, it's conditional probability. No, it's not scary. We are doing it every day, every second. So let's understand this example. Conditions. It rained today. Let's denote it with R0. Okay, fine. It rained today. Do you think it will rain tomorrow? Do you think it will rain tomorrow? Given that it rained today, today is Sunday, do you think it will rain tomorrow also? Yeah, I think there is a high likelihood that it will rain tomorrow also because it rained today also. Okay, then what about day after tomorrow? What about Tuesday? I don't think so. If you ask me, seriously, I don't think so that it will rain with high likelihood on Tuesday also. Because these are 3 consecutive days in a row. Sunday also raining, Monday also raining, Tuesday also raining. What about Wednesday? Do you think it will rain on the 4th day also? Consecutively, लगातार 4 दिन बारिश होगी क्या? Will it rain? Is it possible? It is very unlikely that it will rain 4 consecutive days. It rained yesterday, will it rain today? It didn't rain yesterday, will it rain today? So again, my question is that do you think it's possible to rain for an entire week in any given year? It's really, really unlikely. It won't be 0 or 1, but it's unlikely. It will somewhere be in between 0 and 1. So you see, let's denote this R0 as 0.8 or 1 maybe, right? Then let's denote this, will it rain tomorrow, as a probability of 0.8. Let's denote this as, based on a previous data, 0.7. So if you multiply all this, you will come up with a number which is smaller. So you see that as we go further down the week, our probability, our certainty that it will rain on the 4th day or the 5th day or the 6th day or the 7th day of the week reduces. This is why we use decimal numbers and we multiply them. Because if you multiply 0.1, see, if you multiply 0.8 by 0.8, and again, let's try with smaller numbers. If you multiply 0.2 by 0.2, it's 0.04, and again multiply by 0.2, it's 0.008. So you see, the number is decreasing, and so our certainty or our confidence is also decreasing that it will rain on the 4th day or the 5th day or the 6th day. So this is conditional probability for you, simplified. So let's consider this another example, the stubborn guy. So who is this stubborn guy? So there is no, let's consider a scenario, a very small town, a hypothetical town. एक छोटा सा कस्बा है, let's consider this. In this hypothetical town, there is a stubborn guy who thinks that there is no food outside Noida. Whatever food there is on the earth is in Noida or is in Delhi. There is no food outside Delhi. Now what happens is that the town faces worst drought of the century, but the stubborn guy has 100% firm belief that there is no food outside this town. What happens is that the stubborn guy extincts. Was he really human at all? Is what my question is. Because a probability of 100% or a probability of 0 is unlikely in human systems or living systems. You cannot say with 100% probability that this thing will happen, or with a 100% probability that this certain thing will not occur at all. There might be red tigers or red lions in the universe. Who knows? Have you seen all the lions or the tigers in the universe? We have seen only on the planet Earth, right? There could be a civilization outside the planet Earth, and there might be a lion which is red in color. So you see, the probability of a red lion is never 0. There is a likelihood that a red lion still exists. So the probability, so with this comes this philosophical aspect that to err is human. The probability of exact zero is not supported in living systems. Let's see this visual representation of a recommender system. So recommender system, what a recommender system is that you people might have seen, on Amazon or Flipkart that when you buy some product or when you browse certain products, it says that people with similar habits bought this product, or people who bought this book bought that book also, or people who loved this certain movie loved that movie also. How does this recommender system work in Amazon or Flipkart or Netflix? Let's consider a very small example. Let's say we have data, three users. Let's say we have three users on Netflix or Amazon, and these three users are Amit, Gaurav, and Sumit. And we have only two movies right now. These people have rated these two movies, these two serials. Amit has rated 5 out of 5 for both the serials. Gaurav has rated 2 for GOT and 5 for Breaking Bad. Sumit has rated 1 for GOT and 4 for Breaking Bad. If we plot this data, the first thing we do in machine learning and data science is we simply plot the data. From there we get the intuition. The picture becomes very clear. What is happening, what we want to do, how we want to slice and dice the data. So Amit, you can see, has rated 5 out of 5 on both the serial. So BB it's 5 and GOT is 5. Amit lies here, Gaurav lies here, Sumit lies here. All right. No rocket science, very simple plotting. Now, let's say this X guy, an unknown guy, logs into Netflix and he rates Breaking Bad as 2 and Game of Thrones as 4. Then I ask you the question that who is the nearest neighbor of this particular X guy? Is he Amit, Gaurav, or Sumit? Now that we have plotted the data, we can easily see that whoever is nearest to this X, and if we are able to calculate this distance, then we'll be able to mathematically represent who is nearest to X, and he is the nearest neighbor of X. So let's calculate the distance. You see, it is 1 over here. Distance is 1 and this distance is 3. So what we are doing is we are calculating taxi cab distance. So how taxis travel in subways or in streets of New York, based on that this taxi cab algorithm was devised. So 1 and 3 is 4. So distance of X from Amit is 4 units. What is the distance of X from Gaurav? It is 2 and 3 it is 5. So Gaurav is very far from X. He is not related that nearly to X, this particular guy. And what about Sumit? So Sumit again is distant, too distant. He's 5 units further away from this X guy. So we can see that Amit is very near to this new guy. So we will recommend whatever Amit has bought in his history. We will recommend all those stuff to this particular new user, right? So this is how a very basic recommender system works. Very basic recommender system works. This is the mathematics behind a very basic recommender system. You can build it on your right now on your system. You just have to have this ratings data from user, and you can plot the data, and you can simply calculate the distances. And whenever a new particular user logs in, you can suggest him based on some some partial history of his purchase or likings. That oh my God, I think you might love this particular book, or you might love this particular movie based on your purchase history or your views. Now let's understand this linear separator. Again, I'm trying to explain you everything visually. You don't have to go into mathematics, or you don't have to write any equations. You simply plot all these things and you can understand the machine learning algorithms or the mathematics of machine learning and probability very, very easily. Don't have to write or use any equations at all. So let's say we have this problem of differentiating between certain images. So given black and white images, will you be able to differentiate? These are certain fruits. I'm just telling you that these are certain fruits, and this is a certain another fruit. But both of them are circular and both of them images are black and white. How will you differentiate? To me, all these four fruits look equally similar, because they are black and white, they are circular. How will I differentiate? So I'll go back to the person who asked me to build this model. I'll ask him, listen man, this data that you have given me is black and white. I need some extra information. Why don't you just give me some colored pictures that will give me some extra dimension or information, right? So you see, dimension, when we use dimension in machine learning, it means that we are talking about extra information. So it's, you know, no rocket science. All these things, just that these people have, you know, using some, you know, jargons, technical jargons. It makes people think that, you know, we are talking some high level stuff, but it's really, really basic. So the only information available is shape. Both are almost similar and both are black and white images. Now we need some extra information. So let's say the guy or the questionnaire or the person who want me to solve this problem or wants me to predict which fruits are these, gave me colored pictures. Oh, so now I can see that uh, these two are red colors and these two are orange colored. Let's plot this in a very basic plot. So fruit one is circular, shape is circular, color is reddish. Fruit two, again it's circular and color is orangish. So what do you think will be an intelligent approach to differentiate between these two objects? It's very common sense that color is the best approach, color is the best dimension, color is the best information to differentiate between these two shapes. Because shape, both are circular. How will I differentiate based on shape, right? So that dimension or that information is of no use for me. The color information or the color dimension is of very much use for me right now, because I can clearly see that the images or the balls or the objects on the right side are orangish and the objects on the left side are red. Let's plot this again, all right? So this x-axis is orange and red. So 0 means orange and 1 means red. Or as you go further up the x-axis, you can see, y-axis, sorry, you can see reddish color is there. And on the x-axis, we have shape. So the more you go further down the axis, you see the objects get circular. So you can see easily that all the apples or all the red objects will be, or let's say apples, will be lying over here. So some of them will be more circular, some apples are, you know, less circular. And oranges also. Oranges will also be circular, but then they will be orange in color. So they will be downward, near to the x-axis. Very intuitive, very much common sense, right? So what if I ask you to differentiate? What if I ask you to draw a line which differentiates between these two objects? So there are 3 lines I've given you. There is a gray line, there is a blue line, and there is a green line. So which line do you think intuitively is the best differentiator between these two objects? This is simple machine learning we are doing right here. It's very intuitive to see that the blue line is the best line to differentiate between orange and apple, because from the apples also the blue line is very far off, from the oranges also it's very far off. It's clearly differentiating, clearly demarcating between these two objects. But if you see the gray line is very, very near to the apples and very far from the oranges. That's fine. But what happens if a new apple arrives and it's, you know, it falls below the gray line? Then it will be classified as orange, which is wrong, which is a wrong answer. Again, with the green line, you can see green line is very, very near to the oranges. It is very far from apples, which is a good thing. But then there is no shock absorption ability in this green line. When I say that, what I mean is that suppose a new orange comes and it crosses the line by chance, and then it will be getting classified as apple, which is a wrong answer. So you can see blue line is the best line. It has high shock absorption capability. That even if, you know, a red guy or red apple comes in or an orange comes in, which is, you know, slightly reddish in color, it will again be classified in orange. Basic sentiment analysis. So we hear every day about, you know, Twitter sentiment analysis, comments, and on Facebook, and, you know, people writing comments on during elections. We hear a lot that, you know, for Trump, who is, you know, writing what is the sentiment of public for Trump and Hillary, or let's say Modi, or, you know, Rahul Gandhi, or whosoever, right? So what happens is that a very basic sentiment analysis. If I ask you to build a very basic sentiment analysis, what will you do? If I say that movie is really bad, so we'll say that, you know, whenever somebody uses word bad, means the comment is negative. He doesn't like the movie. But hold on, there's a caveat. What if I say the movie or the actor was really bad ass? So when I say bad ass, it means it's a slang for something really good. So your algorithm, which was very basic, will fail here. It will say that this is a negative comment, but it's not. So you see, you have to build intelligence. You have to build up intelligence like that, to arrive to to build up a sentiment analysis that is really intelligent. So what I gave you an example, it was of a very basic sentiment analysis. So what we do is that, let's say we have a training corpus of Twitter messages and 500 are positive reviews and 500 negative. Somebody labeled it for us, so don't worry about it. Somebody labeled the Twitter comments as positive and negative. So what is the probability that out of these 1000 comments, a comment will be of a positive or negative? It's very easy because 50% are positive and 50% negative. So what I'll do is now is that I'll plot this for all the words used in all these 1000 comments. Let's say 678 words were used in all these 1000 comments by people. I'll plot all those 678 words over here, and then I will plot in this second column what is the probability of that word being used when the sentiment was positive. So let's say what is the probability of word am being used when the sentiment was positive. This is a very simple conditional probability. This term over here, you see that P word over like. What is the probability of that word being used given the sentiment was positive, right? And in the third column, you can see what is the probability of that word being used given the sentiment was negative. So very simple plot. Then we'll arrive with with the calculation. Let's say some new user comes in and he types this comment: I am stunned by the high power gravity. Gravity is a movie starring George Clooney. So let's say somebody types in that I am stunned by the high power gravity. What is the probability that this sentence is positive, this comment is positive or negative? We'll simply compute it. We'll compute it using simply these conditional probability scores. First of all, let's say calculate the score of positive of this comment I am stunned by gravity being positive. What is the likelihood? We'll type probability of it being liked or a positive comment, which is 0.5 over here, you can see. Probability of I given the comment was positive. Probability of am given the comment was positive. Probability of stunned given the comment was positive. We will multiply all these probabilities. Then for the negative, similarly, we'll follow the same approach. Probability of dislike, it's again 50%. So probability of I being used when somebody disliked somebody, the comment was negative. Probability of saying am when the comment was negative. Probability of saying stunned when the comment was negative. So you see, this is the moment of truth. Probability of stunned given dislike. You see, the probability of stunned given dislike will be very, very low, right? So this is how it will change our probability score. So the probabilities, when you multiply these probabilities, we see that for the like, we have, forget the decimal, it will be very, very smaller number. As I told you in the previous slides, when you multiply decimals, you'll arrive at very, very smaller numbers, right? So it will, in the chain probabilities, we arrive at very, very smaller numbers. So you see that it's 0.000622 and dislike is 4720. It is higher. So you can see that this will be a negative comment because dislike, the probability of dislike is more. So probability of dislike is larger than like, so it will be classified as a dislike tweet. So you see, we are using very simple mathematical foundations, class 10th mathematics, and we are able to, and we have been able to understand linear regression, we have been able to understand k-means, we have been able to understand classification, we have been able to understand decision tree, right? Let's look at this image now. What's with the image? How do we classify the images? Let's say the question is about classification between an image of dog or cat. So you see, let's look at the image first. Let's forget about the mathematics, forget about machine learning, forget about AI. When we look at the image, what we see that the snout of the dog is far from his eye, but the snout or nose of the cat is near to his or her eye, right? So this is one concept that we can find. So, this is how we are able to, day to day, we are able to differentiate between things and objects. But it's so much, ingrained in our brain that we don't think about it mathematically. It's so much ingrained in our brain. It has become so much, uh, commonplace that we don't think that we are doing any mathematical calculations, right? Like, when we are learning car, we struggle so much when we are learning something. But when we become expert at it, we don't think about, the technicalities of it. So this is one feature or one thing that based on which we can differentiate between cats and dogs. Similarly, we can see that the ear of the cat is, straight up, while that of the dog is straight down. So these are certain, small features, or things, or dimensions based on which we can differentiate between dog and cat. So this is how machine learning, or CNN, convoluted neural networks, work. We have just given it a name, convoluted neural network, and people get scared. So we'll learn about it in our class also, that how CNN works, or how we differentiate between two images. Now let's quickly, so we don't have much time. I'll just quickly skim over the slides. All right, we have only 5 slides left. Compression distance. It's a very generic algorithm. Everybody has a compressor on his or her machine or system. We use WinZip, WinRAR, we compress files, we send it to people, we share it on email, right? So what is compression distance then? So I'll give you a very small example. You just have to remember this. You can take a snapshot of this slide and you can practice this. You can just try it. No worries, right? Just write your name in a text file, copy paste it 20 times, and without any spaces, just copy paste your names 20 times, right? Don't use any spaces. Save it as name.txt. Let's say my name is Rahul. I'll just type Rahul in a certain text file and just copy and paste it 20 times without any spaces. And count the characters in this file. In Notepad, you can see it shows you characters also, or you can simply count your characters, right? Now, pretend to be a monkey and hit random keys on your keyboard and make sure that you have same number of characters as in name.txt. Now open another text file and hit random keystrokes. Let's say in name.txt you had 125 characters. So similarly in random.txt you have to type 125 random characters and pretend to be a monkey. Just hit all the random keys on your keyboard. Now save this file as random.txt. Now what is the file size of both? Click on the properties and write down the file size of both these files. It will be in bytes, right? Then again, use a compressor, WinZip or WinRAR, whatever you have, and compress both these files. Now again, measure the file size of the compressed files. What do you think will happen to the files before compression and after compression? What will happen to the size? Now remember, all these random.txt and name.txt had same amount of characters, 187 in both of them, or whatever number, whatever length your name might be, right? Based on that, they had same number of characters. But then what will happen after compressing them? One had random keystrokes, one had ordered keystrokes. What do you think will happen after compression, right? Just think about it. You have to do it yourself. Corona infection. Let's do this now, right? Dimension reduction. So there is a very technical term. Oh my God, n number of dimension. There are n number of dimension in machine learning. This data is n number of dimension. How do I deal with n number of dimension? How do I even think in my mind about n number of dimensions? Bloody, I cannot even imagine beyond 3 dimensions. What is 4 dimension, 5 dimension, right? In machine learning, people just throw these terms like anything, like it's very naive. It's very commonplace, right? So corona infection. Let's say somebody gives you this plot. It's a very unrealistic plot. Why? I'll tell you that. Day 1, what happens is that on the very first day there are 5 number of people who are infected with corona. Second day there are 6 number. Third day there are 7. Fourth day there are 8 people. Fifth day there are 9 people. So you can see it's an unrealistic plot because it is a linear plot. And let's say we have On the 1,000th day, it will have 1,005 people infected. On the millionth day, it will have 1 million people. On the 700,000th day, or the as we go on, it will just keep on increasing till the last people on the earth gets infected with corona and dies. So everybody will just vanish. But in reality, it doesn't happen. You see what I told you? Probability of 0 and 1 is not possible in real life or living system. Else, humans would have been wiped out, or a particular species would have been wiped out entirely from the face of Earth, right? But the probability of 0 or 1, or the probability of a certain infection or disease just going on just like that, it won't just keep on increasing linearly. There is an exponential decay. After a certain level of time, it levels off. You can see there are lots of people showing in news and media that the plot just it levels off. It rises and then it tapers off and then it falls off. The number of people infected will reduce. So let's plot this data. You see, that's the Y is infected people, and on x-axis we have day. First day we have 5 people, second day we have 6, third day we have 7. So you can see, if you just draw a line, you can see this is a straight line plot. And the line equation of line from your 10th mathematics is, I'll just be quick because we don't have much time left now. So line equation, the equation of line is, yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, who is it?
People in college.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, I'll just quickly finish off. Just 3-4 slides left. That's it. So the equation of line is y is equal to mx plus c. It's very basic maths again, 10th mathematics. Everybody knows it. If we plot, so using that equation, we can see. Now, what about the slope? You see, you'll ask that m is slope. How do you calculate the slope? Slope is very easy. So you can see the dotted line. Slope is dy by dx, or now we are talking in the terms of differentiation. Change in y, if there is a 1 unit change in y, how much units is caused to change on the x-axis? So there is a 1 unit change in y. 7 minus 6 is 1, and it causes 1 unit change in day also. So each day there is an increment of 1. So this is our slope. That's it. Very simple. So infected people is equal to slope, which is 1 multiplied by day plus 4. 4 is the intercept. You see, c is the intercept. So you can see, if you plot for the first data, you see 4 and day is 0 here. So infected people on day 0, or sorry, the day 1, this is you can see it starts with 4, and then as we increase the day, it keeps on increasing, additional 1 increasing. So you can see we have compressed the data. Let's say this corona infection sheet was 1,000 rows long or 1 lakh rows long, right? It would have been very difficult to save it. But if you use the equation y is equal to mx plus c, you have reduced the 1 lakh row long data to a very single equation, and you can just tell anybody that, you see, corona infection is infected is equal to 1 times day plus 4. That's it. You don't need to share the data which had 1 lakh rows or 1 million rows. So you have compressed the data. You see what you did there? This is how compression works, right? You found a pattern, and based on that pattern, you have compressed the data. Magical, right? And very simple mathematics we have used. Strangers, friends, relation, and correlation. Now let's say you have a friend, you just joined a college in BTech and you are making new friends. So while we make new friends, we are not aware of his or her likings. So let's say you have a friend who rates all the movies, whichever movies he watches, or whatever food he eats, he just rates
Hello,
them.
sir.
Hello?
Yeah, sir. Chemical नहीं है क्या, sir?
Sorry?
Hello. Sir,
Yeah, I
chemical.
can hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah, hello. Yeah, please everyone unmute your mic because we take your question answer session after this completion of demo session. Please hold it and write message your query.
It's
Yeah,
about to
yeah,
get
yeah.
over. Just 5 minutes. Just roll with me.
Rakesh, please keep quiet. Please keep quiet, Rakesh.
So strangers, friends, relation, and correlation. So let's say you have a friend who is, very, very excited about anything and everything. So even if he eats something which he disliked, he would say, and you ask him, "Oh, hey man, how was the burger at that certain Burger King?" He would say, "Yeah, it was okay." And if you ask him to rate it, he would say, "Yeah, I would rate it, 4 stars out of 5." And you would be amazed. Oh my God, he didn't he just disliked the burger. He just said it, and he's rating it 4. Again, you ask him for a certain movie he disliked, and he would again, go on saying that, yeah, I would, rate it 4, man. And the movies he likes, he would rate them 5. So gradually you understand his behavior. This is machine learning. You are trying to understand when you make friends. You will develop this intuition that, oh my God, now I understand. This guy, whenever he dislikes certain thing, he has to rate it 4 star. And when he really likes something, it is 5 star. And when he has given a rating of 5 star, then only I should go and watch that movie, or then only I should go and eat that food. So you see, this is correlation. You have developed the mathematical model. Gaurav has developed the mathematical model inside his mind. And now he understands that when Ankit rates a movie 4 or rates a food 4, it means 1 for me, right? You see the plot here? And when he rates 5, that means 5. Oh my, then only I will go and watch that movie when he rates 5. This is how we make friends. When we make friends, we understand about them, how they are rating certain things. So you are doing machine learning in your mind every day. You see that? And this is correlation right in front of you. No maths, no spooky maths, no equation, nothing. Now the FAQs, I'll handle your FAQs. I know these might be the questions that you people might have in your mind. So why do we need maths for AI and machine learning? Because we need to, you saw that we need to convert all the data into mathematical form, be it images, be it your voice, be your comments on Facebook or Twitter, be your sales record, whatever it is. We have to convert them into numbers. Only then we can add, multiply them. Then we can do probabilistic calculations on them, right? With all the maths and probabilities, machine learning difficult? No, we just saw it. It's really easy, right? You'll agree with me on that front, right? It's really easy. We use 10th mathematics. That's it. And we learned 5 or 6 algorithms in a matter of 1 hour, right? How do we understand the mathematics? So we'll be sharing. So you saw in our course, we'll be sharing workbooks and examples from real life to make you understand the mathematics of machine learning very quickly and very easily. How to survive in AI. Now again, my methodology of teaching is very different from the conventional teaching methods you might have seen on various online courses on machine learning which are happening in India right now. I want to make you independent. You don't have to rely on somebody to explain you, because machine learning is a new field. There are lots of research and happening each and every day. Lots of articles being published by Jan LeCun and the who's who of the machine learning field. Every day, thousands of articles are coming. And you have to understand, to survive in this field, you have to quickly go on and read the articles and understand them and use them in your model or in your problem and arrive at a better accuracy rather than somebody who is using a very archaic or old method. You got the idea, right? So we'll be not be relying too much on conventional textbook. We'll be also reading from research articles, latest research articles, and I'll help you understand the language of research articles, because it's many times written by scientists who use technical jargons and obscure vocabulary. It's difficult to understand. Then what's the difference between AI, ML and DS? I just explained you in the very beginning. How will you learn coding via online sessions? Okay, so I'll be explaining you the coding on these Python notebooks that I'll be hosting on my system. So you see, this will be a Python notebook. We'll be running the code over here, and I'll explain you all the things. This is a very simple linear regression introduction, right? All the course will be there in the GitHub and will be shared with you. I'll be explaining these code line by line in the class, and it will be shared with you after the class gets over, and along with the problem also. And you can just run this these cells and play around with it and try to understand whatever it is. And again, the question now is that newbies aren't entertained on websites like Stack Overflow. So let's say you are playing around with this code and you have a problem. Who do you approach? So normally what people do is that they search their question on Stack Overflow. But on Stack Overflow, you might have seen that newbies are not entertained much. Their questions gets lost in the floods of question arriving each second, every second on the Stack Overflow. So for that, what we have done is that we have built a Stack Overflow forum, a forum like Stack Overflow for all you people, where you can come in, log in, and post your questions, and I'll be giving you or solving those questions for you, and along with each of you, everybody, all the people whoever takes the course can participate on that forum, and you can solve each other queries. By solving, you will be understanding way much, and because we are a community of who will be taking the same course, we'll be knowing each other, that what we want to understand, what was taught today, and based on that we'll be having a better understanding and better relationship with each other, and we'll be able to solve each other problem, and that will again help us a lot, because it's really I've seen that people are not able to formulate a problem. Even asking a problem on Stack Overflow is a art. So you have to be able to explain your problem, what you did, where you failed, what was the error, what all you tried. You have to write that step by step. This is also again an art. This is how you have to express yourself. Only then you'll get the answers properly. So for that, we have devised a forum for you. You can see this is a machine learning forum. People can log in and register, and you can simply ask questions here, right? It's free for all these people will be taking the courses, that is right. So you'll be given an ID, you can log in and you can post your questions and everything. You can ask question, you can click over here and ask question, log in and register, right? Now okay, I had two more slides, but these are some extra slides of based on are we living a simulation or not. So I don't think that's necessary right now, but just give it a thought that are we really living in a simulation? There was a paper published by Nick Bostrom after the movie Matrix. We all might have seen the movie Matrix, but the mathematical philosophical aspect of the movie Matrix, we never try to understand it. It really relates with the philosophy, mathematics, and biology of AI and machine learning. Why I say biology? AI and machine learning is an amalgamation, mathematics, biology, philosophy, and whatnot. You might have seen people from all fields, whether be it physicists, astronauts, astrobiologists, biologists, people from pharma background, computer scientists, EC background, biotechnologists. Everybody has a thought or about machine learning, has a particular notion about machine learning, because machine learning is it's not a field like civil engineering or what there is a term you use for these kind of engineering, right? But it's an amalgamation of all these things. It's an amalgamation of physics, it's an amalgamation of maths, it's an amalgamation of biology. That's what makes machine learning and AI very interesting, because there is new amount of new things coming up, new things popping up every day, and people from all these fields can contribute to AI. So you don't have to worry that you are from biology and you cannot do anything in machine learning and AI. You can, because neural networks was devised based on the human brain, how a human brain functions. That is how a neural network, or which is the foundation of deep learning, which is breaking records, breaking the charts on all the forums, all the competitions. It is based on how our human brain works, which is biology, right? And there is physics again. There is a physics aspects of machine learning. There is a mathematical aspects also. So you don't have to feel scared, because it's an interdisciplinary field. Everybody has to contribute. So the machine learning and AI will benefit really much if people from AI, diverse fields like biology, from pharma, from EC, from computer science, from IIT, or whatever background, from agriculture. If we collaborate together, if we come up together, then we'll be developing some really good solutions. We'll be accelerating the research in AI and machine learning really fast. So it's my call to each one of you, whether you be from biology or pharma, don't feel shy, don't be afraid. We really need you on board. We really need people like you, because who knows, you might be creating some another algorithm, some revolutionary algorithm like neural networks someday in near future, right? That's it from me. Thank you.